need to verify the Twitch channel's still working.
Twistons.
Okay. Alright. So I made a slight change to Magma Monkey's thing. Oh yeah. Let me I'll wait for this song to be done and then I'll stop it. I think I have something called Rail. Really? Yeah, it's awful. Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll leave it. Generate, mirror. There we go. A, Alt N, recalculate outside. Okay. Go ahead and delete this face for no good reason. Alright, then we apply the modifier. And dissolve these edges. There we go. Alright. So here's what I did. Gotta work on that transition a little bit, but... So this part now uses the combat version of the song. So I think I'll fix this level up a little bit more before I publish it, because I think I'll create a second story to this part, where you go back over the top, the roof. And let's pretend I don't have the pants on. I also need to fix the army then. And this music is way too loud. I'm better, but I'm not completely bad. I get the pants. And then I die. So we go... Okay. So you're not using the right speaker. See, I've been sick for the past week. I've been super dizzy at all times, and I couldn't look at my screen because it gave me a headache. Lava level. This needs some more work, but this is what it's supposed to be like. As I go to transition 1, I think. So the problem is you can't hear this bit when you're actually playing the game. So I had to cut it out. Wait. Okay, that's weird. But whatever, I'm not here for that. I'm here for the death sound effects.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Uh-oh. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Uh-oh. Oh no! Oh no! Uh-oh. Oh oh uh-oh. Oh 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 uh-oh. Oh uh-oh. Oh uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh no! 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 Uh-oh! 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 Oh no! 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 Uh-oh! Oh no! Uh-oh! Oh no! Uh-oh! Oh no! Uh-oh! 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 Oh no! 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 Uh-oh! Uh-oh! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Uh-oh! Oh no! Oh no! Uh-oh! Oh no! 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 Uh-oh! Uh-oh! Oh no! Uh-oh! Oh no! Uh-oh! Oh no! Uh-oh! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Uh-oh. Oh no. Uh-oh. Oh no. 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 Uh-oh. Oh no. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh no. 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 Uh-oh. 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 Oh no. Oh no. Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
What if I just turn this to 33?
Uh-oh. Maria.
So now do this. Build for all platforms.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, I forgot I did that. Okay, anyways.
Oh no.
For all platforms, continue. Alright, now we're gonna go back to Lord of the Rings. And then I'm gonna spend the rest of the day making stuff that you can destroy, like in Lego Batman. And so, actually, you know what? I can turn on the music while I work on the code for it. So random objects. Call it something like AP_break. Alright, what it's gonna do. We're also gonna get the coin manager. Now you're not just managing coins. Okay, we got a new string thing called Brokable. Alright, and it's gonna be get broken. Alright, custom. No, it'll be a function, sorry. get broken. And then we'll also make a thing called break. Custom break. We'll take a string, name, add, alright, then we go to, we'll have a output boolean I think we'll have two nodes. We'll do a for each, because I don't think there's like an in, like find item. Oh yeah, and I think it's -1, so we'll do input will be name, and this will be delete. String. Alright, and this will be equals -1. When we go to BP break, we'll say find object, or just like get actor of class. There we go. Void manager. Oh, that reminds me. I need to set a timer. Twitch stuff. Timer. Full timer. I think this is just the thing, so it'll be 2 p.m. today. Actually, I need to stop at about 1:30, not 2. So I'll run without debugging. Python debugger? Yes.
Bestviewers.stream.com, remove the space, at YGLMVWNN.
And you are banned. To report terrorism. No. Spam scan.
Yes, just come on, brothers, if you want to hear a story about that preacher and the bear. Gather round, boys, I don't want you to miss none of this here story, cause it goes like this. A preacher, he went out to hunt. It was on one Sunday morning.
Reviewers.
So he was one Christian young man that he
What?
took his gun along. Well, the first thing he shot was a bunch of fine quails, and he shot him a nice fat hare. Then through the woods on his way back home, he met a great big grizzly bear. Then the Reverend fell down upon his knees. He sent up a great long prayer. Wives, he cast.
I think F. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I wasn't moving. Alright. At this point, I think we just do it at the game mode. Actually, it'll be actors that get got that we do this in. There it is, actors that we got. So we'll do break. We just take the input of name, do string, and then we'll do get broken. Input name, output delete. There we go. File this. So we can go ahead and delete you guys. Now we'll override break. Do you. Oh, hold on. Cool. They just banned that guy. Alright, then we'll do get it's broken. And we'll go to get broken. And we'll literally just copy this. And then finally, we will take brokables. Actually, we don't need get broken anymore. Take brokables, create variable brokables. There we go. Here we go, you. Get game mode. Get is broken. Display name. Nope. Okay. And if it's the case, destroy actor. Then any damage, sorry. I'll go to Rocket Munix. Firework. Give you a new tag. Call it something like PYRS. PYRS. Save everything. Shouldn't need to touch you again. You should be fine, but I'll keep you up in case. Point manager, we don't need to worry about you. Barbara dress. And Barbara, you are only here for the video. Okay. Custom weapons. Ice, water. There are 4 weapons in the game right now. It's water, fire, ice, and Alright, Bazinga attack will just always be active, because Magma Monkey probably doesn't have anything to do with it anyways. Where is Magma Monkey? There he is. Bazinga, Big Bang attack. Okay. Alright, then we go to PvP break. Say, as Jag. If this is the case. And then event break, we also have to do oh yeah, I was wrong. You need a new input, call it value. Drop coins will be drop coins in location. If this starts to lag things, I will fix it, but as of right now, I don't think I'll have to.
There's a place in Candyland
Candyland
for
for
everyone
everyone
but
but
me.
me.
For licorice is all but banned when loved is what it should be. This place is run by everyday sweets. I find it awfully strange. But don't you pout, you'll soon find out it's all about to change. Quiet! As all who know me might suppose, I've hatched a tasty plot. A licorice that grows and grows until there's more than a lot.
Hello there.
Place it in the circle sweet and watch it quickly rise. And soon my chewy sticky goo will reach into the skies. Licorice here, licorice there, far as you can see. The smell of licorice in the air. Yummy, yummy, yummy. So licorice everywhere, soon they'll understand. Life will be so great, so grand here in Licorice Land. Silence! Chocolate pops and strawberry shakes will be against the law. Only licorice birthday cakes, ho yeah! Licorice treats will fill the streets, a glorious display. The world will seem a licorice dream. And we will scream hooray! Licorice here, licorice there, far as you can see. The smell of licorice in the air. Yummy, yummy, yummy. So licorice everywhere, soon they'll understand. Life will be so great, so grand here in Licorice Land. I will rule from a castle with a pool. I'll look great on my licorice estate. Have a throne throne of my own, a licorice crown upon my head. I'll even wear it to bed. Licorice jam, licorice jam. Ah, as you can see, the smell of licorice in the air. Licorice, licorice everywhere. Soon they'll understand. Things have been sublime. Life will be utterly grand here in Licorice Land.
So I call this, I don't know, TP underscore rail. So I'll let's make railing 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Alright, here's what we're gonna I'm gonna go back to level select screen. And let's see, go to get is broken. We're going to say also what index it is. Oh. It's not. Then get tags for each of them. Print string. That is this. Well, luckily it's all saved. Oh, you know what? Oh well, I might be getting lunch on stream, I don't know. I think you're good. Alright, so the only difference between last run and this run is that one piece of code I added to BB Break. Alright, so BP Break is not receiving anything. Yes. Really? So after it's completed, I'd also like to print string, something like did damage. So, oh. So it did damage though, but it's not getting. Not getting the firework. You are plugging self into damage causer. That's the next thing. Do these guys respawn? We're gonna deload area 1. And we're gonna reload area 1. I didn't think about the music. Okay. Yep, works perfectly as expected. There we go, good. Alright, time to turn off the music. Timer's still going? Okie dokie. Turn on The Hobbit, not The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and turn off my mic.
From some way off, or so it seemed, he thought he heard a cry. Hoy! Frodo! Hoy! It was away eastward, on his left as he stood under the great stones, staring and straining into the gloom. He plunged off in the direction of the call, and found himself going steeply uphill. As he struggled on he called again, and kept on calling more and more frantically, but he heard no answer for some time, and then it seemed faint and far ahead and high above him. Frodo! Hoy! Came the thin voices out of the mist, and then a cry that sounded like help, help. Often repeated, ending with a last help. That trailed off into a long wail suddenly cut short. He stumbled forward with all the speed he could towards the cries, but the light was now gone, and clinging night had closed about him, so that it was impossible to be sure of any direction. He seemed all the time to be climbing up and up. Only the change in the level of the ground at his feet told him when he at last came to the top of a ridge or hill. He was weary, sweating and yet chilled. It was wholly dark. "Where are you?" he cried out miserably. There was no reply. He stood listening. He was suddenly aware that it was getting very cold, and that up here a wind was beginning to blow, an icy wind. A change was coming in the weather. The mist was flowing past him now in shreds and tatters. His breath was smoking, and the darkness was less near and thick. He looked up and saw with surprise that faint stars were appearing overhead amid the strands of hurrying cloud and fog. The wind began to hiss over the grass. He imagined suddenly that he caught a muffled cry, and he made towards it, and even as he went forward the mist was rolled up and thrust aside, and the starry sky was unveiled. A glance showed him that he was now facing southwards and was on a round hilltop, which he must have climbed from the north. Out of the east the biting wind was blowing. To his right there loomed against the westward stars a dark black shape. A great barrow stood there. "Where are you?" he cried again, both angry and afraid. "Here," said a voice, deep and cold, that seemed to come out of the ground. "I am waiting for you." "No," said Frodo, but he did not run away. His knees gave, and he fell on the ground. Nothing happened, and there was no sound. Trembling he looked up, in time to see a tall dark figure like a shadow against the stars. It leaned over him. He thought there were two eyes, very cold though lit with a pale light that seemed to come from some remote distance. Then a grip stronger and colder than iron seized him. The icy touch froze his bones, and he remembered no more. When he came to himself again, for a moment he could recall nothing except a sense of dread. Then suddenly he knew that he was imprisoned, caught hopelessly. He was in a barrow. A barrow wight had taken him, and he was probably already under the dreadful spells of the barrow wights about which whispered tales spoke. He dared not move, but lay as he found himself, flat on his back upon a cold stone with his hands on his breast. But though his fear was so great that it seemed to be part of the very darkness that was round him, he found himself as he lay thinking about Bilbo Baggins and his stories, of their jogging along together in the lanes of the Shire and talking about roads and adventures. There is a seed of courage hidden, often deeply, it is true, in the heart of the fattest and most timid hobbit, wailing for some final and desperate danger to make it grow. Frodo was neither very fat nor very timid, indeed, though he did not know it, Bilbo and Gandalf had thought him the best hobbit in the Shire. He thought he had come to the end of his adventure, and a terrible end, but the thought hardened him. He found himself stiffening, as if for a final spring. He no longer felt limp like a helpless prey. As he lay there, thinking and getting a hold of himself, he noticed all at once that the darkness was slowly giving way. A pale greenish light was growing round him. It did not at first show him what kind of a place he was in, for the light seemed to be coming out of himself, and from the floor beside him, and had not yet reached the roof or wall. He turned, and there in the cold glow he saw lying beside him Sam, Pippin, and Merry. They were on their backs, and their faces looked deathly pale, and they were clad in white. About them lay many treasures, of gold maybe, though in that light they looked cold and unlovely. On their heads were circ lents, gold chains were about their waists, and on their fingers were many rings. Swords lay by their sides, and shields were at their feet. But across their three necks lay one long naked sword. Suddenly a song began, a cold murmur, rising and falling. The voice seemed far away and immeasurably dreary, sometimes high in the air and thin, sometimes like a low moan from the ground. Out of the formless stream of sad but horrible sounds, strings of words would now and again shape themselves, grim, hard, cold words, heartless and miserable. The night was railing against the morning of which it was bereaved, and the cold was cursing the warmth for which it hungered. Frodo was chilled to the marrow. After a while the song became clearer, and with dread in his heart he perceived that it had changed into an incantation. Cold be hand and heart and bone, and cold be sleep under stone. Never mere to wake on stony bed. Never, till the sun fails and the moon is dead. In the black wind the stars shall die, and still on gold here let them lie, till the dark Lord lifts his hand, over dead sea and withered land. He heard behind his head a creaking and scraping sound. Raising himself on one arm he looked, and saw now in the pale light that they were in a kind of passage which behind them turned a corner. Round the corner a long arm was groping, walking on its fingers towards Sam, who was lying nearest, and towards the hilt of the sword that lay upon him. At first Frodo felt as if he had indeed been turned into stone by the incantation. Then a wild thought of escape came to him. He wondered if he put on the ring, whether the barrow wight would miss him, and he might find some way out. He thought of himself running free over the grass, grieving for Merry, and Sam, and Pippin, but free and alive himself. Gandalf would admit that there had been nothing else he could do. But the courage that had been awakened in him was now too strong, he could not leave his friends so easily. He wavered, groping in his pocket, and then fought with himself again, and as he did so the arm crept nearer. Suddenly resolve hardened in him, and he seized a short sword that lay beside him, and kneeling he stooped low over the bodies of his companions. With what strength he had he hewed at the crawling arm near the wrist, and the hand broke off, but at the same moment the sword splintered up to the hilt. There was a shriek and the light vanished. In the dark there was a snarling noise. Frodo fell forward over Merry, and Merry's face felt cold. All at once back into his mind, from which it had disappeared with the first coming of the fog, came the memory of the house down under the hill, and of Tom singing. He remembered the rhyme that Tom had taught them. In a small desperate voice he began, "Ho! Tom Bombadil." And with that name his voice seemed to grow strong, it had a full and lively sound, and the dark chamber echoed as if to drum and trumpet. Ho! Tom Bombadil, Tom Bombadillo. By water, wood, and hill, by the reed and willow. By fire, sun, and moon, hearken now and hear us. Come, Tom Bombadil, for our need is near us. There was a sudden deep silence, in which Frodo could hear his heart beating. After a long slow moment he heard plain, but far away, as if it was coming down through the ground or through thick walls, an answering voice singing. Old Tom Bombadil is a merry fellow. Bright blue his jacket is, and his boots are yellow. None has ever caught him yet, for Tom, he is the master. His songs are stronger songs, and his feet are faster. There was a loud rumbling sound, as of stones rolling and falling, and suddenly light streamed in, real light, the plain light of day. A low door-like opening appeared at the end of the chamber beyond Frodo's feet, and there was Tom's head, hat, feather, and all, framed against the light of the sun rising red behind him. The light fell upon the floor, and upon the faces of the three hobbits lying beside Frodo. They did not stir, but the sickly hue had left them. They looked now as if they were only very deeply asleep. Tom stooped, removed his hat, and came into the dark chamber, singing. Get out, you old wight! Vanish in the sunlight. Shrivel like the cold mist, like the winds go wailing. Out into the barren lands far beyond the mountains. Come never here again. Leave your barrow empty. Lost and forgotten be, darker than the darkness. Where gates stand forever shut, till the world is mended. At these words there was a cry and part of the inner end of the chamber fell in with a crash. Then there was a long trailing shriek, fading away into an unguessable distance, and after that silence. Come, friend Frodo, said Tom. Let us get out onto clean grass. You must help me bear them. Together they carried out Merry, Pippin, and Sam. As Frodo left the barrow for the last time he thought he saw a severed hand wriggling still, like a wounded spider, in a heap of fallen earth. Tom went back in again, and there was a sound of much thumping and stamping. When he came out he was bearing in his arms a great load of treasure, things of gold, silver, copper, and bronze, many beads and chains and jeweled ornaments. He climbed the green barrow and laid them all on top in the sunshine. There he stood, with his hat in his hand and the wind in his hair, and looked down upon the three hobbits, that had been laid on their backs upon the grass at the west side of the mound. Raising his right hand he said in a clear and commanding voice. Wake now my merry tads. Wake and hear me calling. Warm now be heart and limb. The cold stone is fallen. Dark door is standing wide, dead hand is broken. Night under night is flown, and the gate is open. To Frodo's great joy the hobbits stirred, stretched their arms, rubbed their eyes, and then suddenly sprang up. They looked about in amazement, first at Frodo, and then at Tom standing large as life on the barrow top above them, and then at the... To Frodo's great joy the hobbits stirred, stretched their arms, rubbed their eyes, and then suddenly sprang up. They looked about in amazement, first at Frodo, and then at Tom standing large as life on the barrow top above them, and then at themselves in their thin white rags, crowned and belted with pale gold, and jingling with trinkets. "What in the name of wonder," began Merry, feeling the golden circlet that had slipped over one eye. Then he stopped, and a shadow came over his face, and he closed his eyes. "Of course, I remember," he said. "The men of Carn Dum came on us at night, and we were worsted. Ah! The spear in my heart." He clutched at his breast. "No. No," he said, opening his eyes. "What am I saying? I have been dreaming. Where did you get to, Frodo?" "I thought that I was lost," said Frodo, "but I don't want to speak of it. Let us think of what we are to do now. Let us go on." "Dressed up like this, sir," said Sam. "Where are my clothes?" He flung his circlet, belt, and rings on the grass, and looked round helplessly, as if he expected to find his cloak, jacket, and breeches, and other hobbit garments lying somewhere to hand. "You won't find your clothes again," said Tom, bounding down from the mound, and laughing as he danced round them in the sunlight. One would have thought that nothing dangerous or dreadful had happened, and indeed the horror faded out of their hearts as they looked at him, and saw the merry glint in his eyes. "What do you mean?" asked Pippin, looking at him, half puzzled and half amused. "Why not?" But Tom shook his head, saying, "You've found yourselves again, out of the deep water. Clothes are but little loss, if you escape from drowning. Be glad, my merry friends, and let the warm sunlight heal now heart and limb. Cast off these cold rags. Run naked on the grass, while Tom goes a-hunting." He sprang away downhill, whistling and calling. Looking down after him, Frodo saw him running away southwards along the green hollow between their hill and the next, still whistling and crying. "Hey! Now! Come hoy now! Whither do you wander? Up, down, near or far, here, there, or yonder? Sharp ears, wise nose, swishtail, and bumpkin. White socks, my little lad, and old fatty lumpkin." So he sang, running fast, tossing up his hat and catching it, until he was hidden by a fold of the ground, but for some time his "hey now! Hoy now!" came floating back down the wind, which had shifted round towards the south. The air was growing very warm again. The hobbits ran about for a while on the grass, as he told them. Then they lay basking in the sun with the delight of those that have been wafted suddenly from bitter winter to a friendly clime, or of people that, after being long ill and bedridden, wake one day to find that they are unexpectedly well and the day is again full of promise. By the time that Tom returned they were feeling strong, and hungry. He reappeared, hat first, over the brow of the hill, and behind him came in an obedient line 6 ponies, their own 5 and one more. The last was plainly old fatty Lumpkin. He was larger, stronger, fatter, and older, than their own ponies. Merry, to whom the others belonged, had not, in fact, given them any such names, but they answered to the new names that Tom had given them for the rest of their lives. Tom called them one by one and they climbed over the brow and stood in a line. Then Tom bowed to the hobbits. "Here are your ponies, now," he said. "They've more sense, in some ways, than you wandering hobbits have, more sense in their noses. For they sniff danger ahead which you walk right into, and if they run to save themselves, then they run the right way. You must forgive them all, for though their hearts are faithful, to face fear of arrow wights is not what they were made for. See, here they come again, bringing all their burdens." Merry, Sam, and Pippin now clothed themselves in spare garments from their packs, and they soon felt too hot, for they were obliged to put on some of the thicker and warmer things that they had brought against the oncoming of winter. "Where does that other old animal, that fatty Lumpkin, come from?" asked Frodo. "He's mine," said Tom. "My four-legged friend, though I seldom ride him, and he wanders often far, free upon the hillsides. When your ponies stayed with me, they got to know my Lumpkin, and they smelled him in the night, and quickly ran to meet him. I thought he'd look for them and with his words of wisdom take all their fear away. But now, my jolly Lumpkin, old Tom's going to ride. Hey! He's coming with you, just to set you on the road, so he needs a pony. For you cannot easily talk to hobbits that are riding, when you're on your own legs trying to trot beside them. The hobbits were delighted to hear this, and thanked Tom many times, but he laughed, and said that they were so good at losing themselves that he would not feel happy till he had seen them safe over the borders of his land. I've got things to do, he said, my making and my singing, my talking and my walking, and my watching of the country. Tom can't be always near to open doors and willow cracks. Tom has his house to mind, and Goldberry is waiting. It was still fairly early by the sun, something between 9 and 10, and the hobbits turned their minds to food. Their last meal had been lunch beside the Standing Stone the day before. They breakfasted now off the remainder of Tom's provisions, meant for their supper, with additions that Tom had brought with him. It was not a large meal, considering hobbits and the circumstances, but they felt much better for it. While they were eating, Tom went up to the mound, and looked through the treasures. Most of these he made into a pile that glistened and sparkled on the grass. He bade them lie there free to all finders, birds, beasts, elves or men, and all kindly creatures, for so the spell of the mound should be broken and scattered and no wight ever come back to it. He chose for himself from the pile a brooch set with blue stones, many shaded like flax flowers or the wings of blue butterflies. He looked long at it, as if stirred by some memory, shaking his head, and saying at last, "Here is a pretty toy for Tom and for his lady. Fair was she who long ago wore this on her shoulder. Goldberry shall wear it now, and we will not forget her." For each of the hobbits he chose a dagger, long, leaf-shaped, and keen, of marvelous workmanship, damasked with serpent forms in red and gold. They gleamed as he drew them from their black sheaths, wrought of some strange metal, light and strong, and set with many fiery stones. Whether by some virtue in these sheaths or because of the spell that lay on the mound, the blades seemed untouched by time, unrusted, sharp, glittering in the sun. "Old knives are long enough as swords for hobbit people," he said. "Sharp blades are good to have, if shire folk go walking, east, south, or far away into dark and danger." Then he told them that these blades were forged many long years ago by men of Western Essie. They were foes of the Dark Lord, but they were overcome by the evil king of Carndum in the land of Angmar. "Few now remember them," Tom murmured, "yet still some go wandering, sons of forgotten kings walking in loneliness, guarding from evil things folk that are heedless." The hobbits did not understand his words, but as he spoke they had a vision as it were of a great expanse of years behind them, like a vast shadowy plain over which there strode shapes of men, tall and grim with bright swords, and last came one with a star on his brow. Then the vision faded, and they were back in the sunlit world. It was time to start again. They made ready, packing their bags and lading their ponies. Their new weapons they hung on their leather belts under their jackets, feeling them very awkward, and wondering if they would be of any use. Fighting had not before occurred to any of them as one of the adventures in which their flight would land them. At last they set off. They led their ponies down the hill, and then mounting they trotted quickly along the valley. They looked back and saw the top of the old mound on the hill, and from it the sunlight on the gold went up like a yellow flame. Then they turned the shoulder of the downs and it was hidden from view. Though Frodo looked about him on every side he saw no sign of the great stone standing like a gate, and before long they came to the northern gap and rode swiftly through, and the land fell away before them. It was a merry journey with Tom Bombadil trotting gaily beside them, or before them, on Fatty Lumpkin, who could move much faster than his earthly horse. Tom sang most of the time, but it was chiefly nonsense, or else perhaps a strange language unknown to the hobbits, an ancient language whose words were mainly those of wonder and delight. They went forward steadily, They soon saw that the road was further away than they had imagined. Even without a clock, their sleep at midday would have prevented them from reaching it until after nightfall on the day before. The dark line they had seen was not a line of trees but a line of bushes growing on the edge of a deep dike with a steep wall on the further side. Tom said that it had once been the boundary of a kingdom, a very long line ago. He seemed to remember something sad about it, and would not say much. They climbed down and out of the dike and through a gap in the wall, and then Tom turned due north, for they had been bearing somewhat to the west. The land was now open and fairly level, and they quickened their pace, but the sun was already sinking low when at last they saw a line of tall trees ahead, and they knew that they had come back to the road after many unexpected adventures. They galloped their ponies over the last furlongs, and halted under the long shadows of the trees. They were on the top of a sloping bank, and the road, now dim as evening drew on, wound away below them. At this point it ran nearly from southwest to northeast, and on their right it fell quickly down into a wide hollow. It was rutted and bore many signs of the recent heavy rain. There were pools and potholes full of water. They rode down the bank and looked up and down. There was nothing to be seen. "Well, here we are again at last," said Frodo. "I suppose we haven't lost more than 2 days by my short run through the forest. But perhaps if the lake will prove useful, it may have put them off our trail." The others looked at him. The shadow of the fear of the Black Riders came suddenly over them again. Ever since they had entered the forest they had thought chiefly of getting back to the road, only now when it lay beneath their feet did they remember the danger which pursued them, and was more than likely to be lying in wait for them upon the road itself. They looked anxiously back towards the setting sun, but the road was brown and empty. "Do you think," asked Pippin hesitatingly, "do you think we may be pursued tonight?" "No, I hope not tonight," answered Tom Bombadil, "nor perhaps the next day. But do not trust my guess, for I cannot tell for certain. Out east my knowledge fails. Tom is not master of riders from the Black Land far beyond his country." All the same the hobbits wished he was coming with them. They felt that he would know how to deal with Black Riders, if anyone did. They would soon now be going forward into lands wholly strange to them, and beyond all but the most vague and distant legends of the Shire, and in the gathering twilight they longed for home. A deep loneliness and sense of loss was on them. They stood silent, reluctant to make the final parting, and only slowly became aware that Tom was wishing them farewell, and telling them to have good heart and to ride on till dark without halting. "Tom will give you good advice, till this day is over. After that your own luck must go with you and guide you. 4 miles along the road you'll come upon a village, Bree under Bree Hill, with doors looking westward. There you'll find an old inn that is called the Prancing Pony. Barlaam Butterbur is the worthy keeper. There you can stay the night, and afterwards the morning will speed you upon your way. Be bold, but wary. Keep up your merry hearts, and ride to meet your fortune." They begged him to come at least as far as the inn and drink once more with them, but he laughed and refused, saying, "Tom's country ends here, he will not pass the borders. Tom has his house to mind, and Goldberry is waiting." Then he turned, tossed up his hat, leaped on Lumpkin's back, and rode up over the bank and away singing into the dusk. The hobbits climbed up and watched him until he was out of sight. "I am sorry to take leave of Master Bombadil," said Sam. "He's a caution and no mistake. I reckon we may go a good deal further and see naught better, nor queerer. But I won't deny I'll be glad to see this prancing pony he spoke of. I hope it'll be like the Green Dragon away back home. What sort of folk are they in Bree?" "There are hobbits in Bree," said Merry, "as well as big folk. I dare say it will be homelike enough. The pony is a good inn by all accounts. My people ride out there now and again." "It may be all we could wish," said Frodo, "but it is outside the Shire all the same. Don't make yourselves too much at home. Please remember all of you, that the name of Baggins must not be mentioned. I am Mr. Underhill, if any name must be given." They now mounted their ponies and rode off silently into the evening. Darkness came down quickly, as they plodded slowly downhill and up again, until at last they saw lights twinkling some distance ahead. Before them rose Bree Hill barring the way, a dark mass against misty stars, and under its western flank nestled a large village. Towards it they now hurried, desiring only to find a fire, and a door between them and the night. Chapter 9. At the sign of the Prancing Pony. Bree was the chief village of the Bree land, a small inhabited region, like an island in the empty lands round about. Besides Bree itself, there was Staddle on the other side of the hill, Coombe in a deep valley a little further eastward, and Arquette on the edge of the Chetwood. Lying round Bree Hill and the villages was a small country of fields and tamed woodland only a few miles broad. The men of Bree were brown-haired, broad, and rather short, cheerful and independent. They belonged to nobody but themselves, but they were more friendly and familiar with hobbits, dwarves, elves, and other inhabitants of the world about them than was, or is, usual with big people. According to their own tales, they were the original inhabitants and were the descendants of the first men that ever wandered into the west of the Middle World. Few had survived the turmoils of the elder days, but when the kings returned again over the Great Sea, they had found the Bree men still there, and they were still there now, when the memory of the old kings had faded into the grass. In those days no other men had settled dwellings so far west, or within 100 leagues of the Shire. But in the wild lands beyond Bree there were mysterious wanderers. The Bree folk called them rangers, and knew nothing of their origin. They were taller and darker than the men of Bree and were believed to have strange powers of sight and hearing, and to understand the languages of beasts and birds. They roamed at will southwards, and eastwards even as far as the Misty Mountains, but they were now few and rarely seen. When they appeared they brought news from afar, and told strange forgotten tales which were eagerly listened to, but the Bree folk did not make friends of them. There were also many families of hobbits in the Bree land, and they claimed to be the oldest settlement of hobbits in the world, one that was founded long before even the Brandywine was crossed and the Shire colonized. They lived mostly in Staddle, though there were some in Bree itself, especially on the higher slopes of the hill, above the houses of the men. The big folk and the little folk, as they called one another, were on friendly terms, minding their own affairs in their own ways, but both rightly regarding themselves as necessary parts of the Bree folk. Nowhere else in the world was this peculiar, but excellent, arrangement to be found. The Bree folk, big and little, did not themselves travel much, and the affairs of the four villages were their chief concern. Occasionally the hobbits of Bree went as far as Buckland, or the East Farthing, but though their link land was not much further than a day's riding east of the Brandywine Bridge, the hobbits of the Shire now seldom visited it. An occasional Bucklander or adventurous took would come out to the inn for a night or two, but even that was becoming less and less usual. The Shire hobbits referred to those of Bree, and to any others that lived beyond the borders, as outsiders, and took very little interest in them, considering them dull and uncouth. There were probably many more outsiders scattered about in the west of the world in those days than the people of the Shire imagined. Some, doubtless, were no better than tramps, ready to dig a hole in any bank and stay only as long as it suited them. But in the Bree land, at any rate, the hobbits were decent and prosperous, and no more rustic than most of their distant relatives inside. It was not yet forgotten that there had been a time when there was much coming and going between the Shire and Bree. There was Bree blood in the Brandybucks by all accounts. The village of Bree had some 100 stone houses of the big folk, mostly above the road, nestling on the hillside with windows looking west. On that side, running in more than half a circle from the hill and back to it, there was a deep dike with a thick hedge on the inner side. Over this the road crossed by a causeway, but where it pierced the hedge it was barred by a great gate. There was another gate in the southern comer where the road ran out of the village. The gates were closed at nightfall, but just inside them were small lodges for the gatekeepers. Down on the road, where it swept to the right to go round the foot of the hill, there was a large inn. It had been built long ago when the traffic on the roads had been far greater. For Bree stood at an old meeting of ways, another ancient road crossed the east road just outside, he dike at the western end of the village, and in former days men and other folk of various sorts had travelled much on it. Strange as news from Bree was still a saying in the East Farthing, descending from those days, when news from north, south, and east could be heard in the inn, and when the Shire hobbits used to go more often to hear it. But the northern lands had long been desolate, and the north road was now seldom used, it was grass-grown, and the Bree folk called it the Greenway. The inn of Bree was still there, however, and the innkeeper was an important person. His house was a meeting place for the idle, talkative, and inquisitive among the inhabitants, large and small, of the 4 villages, and a resort of rangers and other wanderers, and for such travellers, mostly dwarves, as still journeyed on the east road, to and from the mountains. It was dark, and white stars were shining, when Frodo and his companions came at last to the Greenway crossing and drew near the village. They came to the west gate and found it shut, but at the door of the lodge beyond it, there was a man sitting. He jumped up and fetched a lantern and looked over the gate at them in surprise. "What do you want, and where do you come from?" he asked gruffly. "We are making for the inn here," answered Frodo. "We are journeying east and cannot go further tonight." "Hobbits." "4 hobbits. And what's more, out of the Shire by their talk," said the gatekeeper, softly as if speaking to himself. He stared at them darkly for a moment, and then slowly opened the gate and let them ride through. "We don't often see Shire folk riding on the road at night," he went on, as they halted a moment by his door. "You'll pardon my wondering what business takes you away east of Bree. What may your names be, might I ask?" "Our names and our business are our own, and this does not seem a good place to discuss them," said Frodo, not liking the look of the man or the tone of his voice. "Your business is your own, no doubt," said the man, "but it's my business to ask questions after nightfall. We are hobbits from Buckland, and we have a fancy to travel and to stay at the inn here," put in Merry. "I am Mr. Brandybuck. Is that enough for you?" The Bree folk used to be fair-spoken to travellers, or so I had heard. All right," said the man. "I meant no offence. But you'll find maybe that more folk than old Harry at the gate will be asking you questions. There's queer folk about. If you go onto the pony, you'll find you're the only guests." He wished them good night, and they said no more, but Frodo could see in the lantern light that the man was still eyeing them curiously. He was glad to hear the gate clang to behind them, as they rode forward. He wondered why the man was so suspicious, and whether anyone had been asking for news of a party of hobbits. Could it have been Gandalf? He might have arrived, while they were late in the forest and the downs. But there was something in the look and the voice of the gatekeeper that made him uneasy. The man stared after the hobbits for a moment, and then he went back to his house. As soon as his back was turned, a dark figure climbed quickly in over the gate and melted into the shadows of the village street. The hobbits rode on up a gentle slope, passing a few detached houses, and drew up outside the inn. The houses looked large and strange to them. Sam stared up at the inn with its 3 stories and many windows, and felt his heart sink. He had imagined himself meeting giants taller than trees, and other creatures even more terrifying, some time or other in the course of his journey, but at the moment he was finding his first sight of men and their tall houses quite enough, indeed too much for the dark end of a tiring day. He pictured black horses standing all saddled in the shadows of the inn yard, and black riders peering out of dark upper windows. "We surely aren't going to stay here for the night, are we, sir?" he exclaimed. "If there are hobbit folk in these pans, why don't we look for some that would be willing to take us in? It would be more homelike." "What's wrong with the inn?" said Frodo. "Tom Bombadil recommended it. I expect it's homelike enough inside." Even from the outside the inn looked a pleasant house to familiar eyes. It had a front on the road, and 2 wings running back on land partly cut out of the lower slopes of the hill, so that at the rear the second-floor windows were level with the ground. There was a wide arch leading to a courtyard between the two wings, and on the left under the arch there was a large doorway reached by a few broad steps. The door was open and light streamed out of it. Above the arch there was a lamp, and beneath it swung a large signboard, a fat white pony reared up on its hind legs. Over the door was painted in white letters, "The Prancing Pony" by Barlaam Butterbur. Many of the lower windows showed lights behind thick curtains. As they hesitated outside in the gloom, someone began singing a merry song inside, and many cheerful voices joined loudly in the chorus. They listened to this encouraging sound for a moment and then got off their ponies. The song ended and there was a burst of laughter and clapping. They led their ponies under the arch, and leaving them standing in the yard they climbed up the steps. Frodo went forward and nearly bumped into a short fat man with a bald head and a red face. He had a white apron on, and was bustling out of one door and in through another, carrying a tray laden with full mugs. "Can we begin, Frodo?" "Half a minute, if you please," shouted the man over his shoulder, and vanished into a babel of voices and a cloud of smoke. In a moment he was out again, wiping his hands on his apron. "Good evening, little master," he said, bending down. "What may you be wanting?" "Beds for 4, and stabling for 5 ponies, if that can be managed." "Are you Mr. Butterbur?" "That's right. Barlaam is my name." "Barlaam Butterbur at your service." "You're from the Shire, eh?" he said, and then suddenly he clapped his hand to his forehead, as if trying to remember something. "Hobbits," he cried. "Now what does that remind me of?" "Might I ask your names, sir?" "Mr. Took and Mr. Brandybuck," said Frodo, "and this is Sam Gamgee." "My name is Underhill." "There now," said Mr. Butterbur, snapping his fingers. "It's gone again. But it'll come back, when I have time to think. I'm run off my feet, but I'll see what I can do for you. We don't often get a party out of the Shire nowadays, and I should be sorry not to make you welcome. But there is such a crowd already in the house tonight as there hasn't been for long enough. It never rains but it pours, we say in Bree." "Ha! Nob," he shouted. "Where are you, you woolly-footed slowcoach?" "Nob." "Coming, sir. Coming." A cheery-looking hobbit bobbed out of a door, and seeing the travelers, stopped short and stared at them with great interest. "Where's Bob?" asked the landlord. "You don't know? Well, find him. Double sharp. I haven't got 6 legs, nor 6 eyes neither. Tell Bob there's 5 ponies that have to be stabled. He must find room somehow." Nob trotted off with a grin and a wink. "Well, now, what was I going to say?" said Mr. Butterbur, tapping his forehead. "One thing drives out another, so to speak. I'm that busy tonight, my head is going round. There's a party that came up the Greenway from down south last night, and that was strange enough to begin with. Then there's a travelling company of dwarves going west come in this evening. And now there's you. If you weren't hobbits, I doubt if we could house you. But we've got a room or 2 in the north wing that were made special for hobbits, when this place was built. On the ground floor as they usually prefer, round windows and all as they like it. I hope you'll be comfortable. You'll be wanting supper, I don't doubt. As soon as may be. This way now." He led them a short way down a passage, and opened a door. "Here is a nice little parlor," he said. "I hope it will suit. Excuse me now. I'm that busy. No time for talking. I must be trotting. It's hard work for 2 legs, but I don't get thinner. I'll look in again later. If you want anything, ring the handbell, and Nob will come. If he don't come, ring and shout." Off he went at last, and left them feeling rather breathless. He seemed capable of an endless stream of talk, however busy he might be. They found themselves in a small and cozy room. There was a bit of bright fire burning on the hearth, and in front of it were some low and comfortable chairs. There was a round table, already spread with a white cloth, and on it was a large handbell. But Nob, the hobbit servant, came bustling in long before they thought of ringing. He brought candles and a tray full of plates. "Will you be wanting anything to drink, masters?" he asked. "And shall I show you the bedrooms, while your supper is got ready?" They were washed and in the middle of good deep mugs of beer when Mr. Butterbur and Nob came in again. In a twinkling the table was laid. There was hot soup, cold meats, a blackberry tart, new loaves, slabs of butter, and half a ripe cheese, good plain food, as good as the Shire could show, and homelike enough to dispel the last of Sam's misgivings, already much relieved by the excellence of the beer. The landlord hovered round for a link, and then prepared to leave them. "I don't know whether you would care to join the company, when you have supped," he said, standing at the door. "Perhaps you would rather go to your beds. Still the company would be very pleased to welcome you, if you had a mind. We don't get outsiders, travellers from the Shire, I should say, begging your pardon, often, and we like to hear a bit of news, or any story or song you may have in mind. But as you please. Ring the bell, if you lack anything." So refreshed and encouraged did they feel at the end of their supper, about 3/4 of an hour's steady going, not hindered by unnecessary talk, that Frodo, Pippin, and Sam decided to join the company. Merry said it would be too stuffy. "I shall sit here quietly by the fire for a bit, and perhaps go out later for a sniff of the air. Mind your PS and QS, and don't forget that you are supposed to be escaping in secret, and are still on the high road and not very far from the Shire." "All right," said Pippin. "Mind yourself. Don't get lost, and don't forget that it is safer indoors." The company was in the big common room of the inn. The gathering was large and mixed, as Frodo discovered, when his eyes got used to the light. This came chiefly from a blazing log fire, for the 3 lamps hanging from the beams were dim, and half veiled in smoke. Barlaam Butterbur was standing near the fire, talking to a couple of dwarves and 1 or 2 strange-looking men. On the benches were various folk, men of Bree, a collection of local hobbits, sitting chattering together, a few more dwarves, and other vague figures difficult to make out away in the shadows and comers. As soon as the Shire hobbits entered, there was a chorus of welcome from the Breelanders. The strangers, especially those that had come up the greenway, stared at them curiously. The landlord introduced the newcomers to the Bree folk, so quickly that, though they caught many names, they were seldom sure who the names belonged to. The men of Bree seemed all to have rather botanical, and to the Shire folk rather odd, names, like Rushlight, Goatleaf, Heathertoes, Appledore, Thistlewool and Ferny, not to mention Butterbur. Some of the hobbits had similar names. The mugworts, for instance, seemed numerous. But most of them had natural names, such as Banks, Rockhouse, Longholes, Sandheaver, and Tunnelly, many of which were used in the Shire. There were several Underhills from Saddle, and as they could not imagine sharing a name without being related, they took Frodo to their hearts as a long-lost cousin. The Bree hobbits were, in fact, friendly and inquisitive, and Frodo soon found that some explanation of what he was doing would have to be given. He gave out that he was interested in history and geography, at which there was much wagging of heads, although neither of these words were much used in the Bree dialect. He said he was thinking of writing a book, at which there was silent astonishment, and that he and his friends wanted to collect information about hobbits living outside the Shire, especially in the eastern lands. At this a chorus of voices broke out. If Frodo had really wanted to write a book, and had had many heirs, he would have learned enough for several chapters in a few minutes. And if that was not enough, he was given a whole list of names, beginning with Old Parliament here, to whom he could go for further information. But after a time, as Frodo did not show any sign of writing a book on the spot, the hobbits returned to their questions about doings in the Shire. Frodo did not prove very communicative, and he soon found himself sitting alone in a covert, listening and looking around. The men and dwarves were mostly talking of distant events and telling clues of the kind that was ending to be. There was trouble away in the south, and it seemed that the men who had come up the Greenway were on the move, looking for lands where they could find some peace. The Bree folk were sympathetic, but plainly not very ready to take a large number of strangers into their little land. One of the travelers, a squint-eyed ill-favored fellow, was foretelling that more and more people would be coming north in the near future. If room isn't found for them, they'll find it for themselves. They've a right to live, same as other folk, he said loudly. The local inhabitants did not look pleased at the prospect. The hobbits did not pay much attention to all this, and it did not at the moment seem to concern hobbits. Big folk could hardly beg for lodgings in hobbit holes. They were more interested in Sam and Pippin, who were now feeling quite at home, and were chatting gaily about events in the Shire. Pippin roused a good deal of laughter with an account of the collapse of the roof of the town hall in Michel Delving. Will Whitfoot, the mayor, and the fattest hobbit in the West Farthing, had been buried in chalk, and came out like a floured dumpling. But there were several questions asked that made Frodo a little uneasy. One of the Bree-landers, who seemed to have been in the Shire several times, wanted to know where the Underhills lived and who they were related to. Suddenly Frodo noticed that a strange-looking weather-beaten man, sitting in the shadows near the wall, was also listening intently to the hobbit talk. He had a tall tankard in front of him, and was smoking a long-stemmed pipe curiously carved. His legs were stretched out before him, showing high boots of supple leather that fitted him well, but had seen much wear and were now caked with mud. A travel-stained cloak of heavy dark green cloth was drawn close about him, and in spite of the heat of the room he wore a hood that overshadowed his face, but the gleam of his eyes could be seen as he watched the hobbits. "Who is that?" Frodo asked, when he got a chance to whisper to Mr. Butterbur. "I don't think you introduced him." "Him," said the landlord in an answering whisper, cocking an eye without turning his head. "I don't rightly know. He is one of the wandering folk rangers we call them. He seldom talks, not but what he can tell a rare tale when he has the mind. He disappears for a month, or a year, and then he pops up again. He was in and out pretty often last spring, but I haven't seen him about lately. What his right name is I've never heard, but he's known round here as Strider. Goes about at a great pace on his long shanks, though he don't tell nobody what cause he has to hurry. But there's no accounting for east and west, as we say in Bree, meaning the rangers and the Shire folk, begging your pardon. Funny you should ask about him." But at that moment Mr. Butterbur was called away by a demand for more ale, and his last remark remained unexplained. Frodo found that Strider was now looking at him, as if he had heard or guessed all that had been said. Presently, with a wave of his hand and a nod, he invited Frodo to come over and sit by him. As Frodo drew near he threw back his hood, showing a shaggy head of dark hair necked with grey, and in a pale stem face a pair of keen grey eyes. "I am called Strider," he said in a low voice. "I am very pleased to meet you. Master Underhill, if old Butterbur got your name right." "He did," said Frodo stiffly. He felt far from comfortable under the stare of those keen eyes. "Well, Master Underhill," said Strider, "if I were you, I should stop your young friends from talking too much. Drink, fire, and chance meeting are pleasant enough, but, well, this isn't the Shire. There are queer folk about. Though I say it as shouldn't, you may think," he added with a wry smile, seeing Frodo's glance. "And there have been even stranger travelers through Bree lately," he went on, watching Frodo's face. Frodo returned his gaze but said nothing, and Strider made no further sign. His attention seemed suddenly to be fixed on Pippin. To his alarm Frodo became aware that the ridiculous young Took, encouraged by his success with the fat mayor of Michel Delving, was now actually giving a comic account of Bilbo's farewell party. He was already giving an imitation of the speech, and was drawing near to the astonishing disappearance. Frodo was annoyed. It was a harmless enough tale for most of the local hobbits, no doubt, just a funny story about those funny people away beyond the river, but some, old Butterbur, for instance, knew a thing or two, and had probably heard rumors long ago about Bilbo's vanishing. It would bring the name of Baggins to their minds, especially if there had been inquiries in Bree after that name. Frodo fidgeted, wondering what to do. Pippin was evidently much enjoying the attention he was getting, and had become quite forgetful of their danger. Frodo had a sudden fear that in his present mood he might even mention the ring, and that might well be disastrous. "You had better do something quick," whispered Strider in his ear. Frodo jumped up and stood on a table, and began to talk. The attention of Pippin's audience was disturbed. Some of the hobbits looked at Frodo and laughed and clapped, thinking that Mr. Underhill had taken as much ale as was good for him. Frodo suddenly felt very foolish, and found himself, as was his habit when making a speech, fingering the things in his pocket. He felt the ring on its chain, and quite unaccountably the desire came over him to slip it on and vanish out of the silly situation. It seemed to him, somehow, as if me suggestion came to him from outside, from someone or something in the room. He resisted the temptation firmly, and clasped the ring in his hand, as if to keep a hold on it and prevent it from escaping or doing any mischief. At any rate it gave him no inspiration. He spoke a few suitable words, as they would have said in the Shire, "We are all very much gratified by the kindness of your reception, and I venture to hope that my brief visit will help to renew the old ties of friendship between the Shire and Bree," and then he hesitated and coughed. Everyone in the room was now looking at him. "A song," shouted one of the hobbits. "A song! A song!" shouted all the others. "Come on now, master, sing us something that we haven't heard before." For a moment Frodo stood gaping. Then in desperation he began a ridiculous song that Bilbo had been rather fond of, and indeed rather proud of, for he had made up the words himself. It was about an inn, and that is probably why it came into Frodo's mind just then. Here it is in full. Only a few words of it are now, as a rule, remembered. There is an inn, a merry old inn, beneath an old grey hill. And there they brew a beer so brown that the man in the moon himself came down one night to drink his fill. The ostler has a tipsy cat that plays a 5-stringed fiddle, and up and down he runs his bow, now squeaking high, now purring low, now sawing in the middle. The landlord keeps a little dog that is mighty fond of jokes. When there's good cheer among the guests, he cocks an ear at all the jests, and laughs until he chokes. They also keep a horned cow, as proud as any queen. But music turns her head like ale, and makes her wave her tufted tail, and dance upon the green. And oh, the rows of silver dishes, and the store of silver spoons. For Sunday * there's a special pair, and these they polish up with care. On Saturday afternoons, the man in the moon was drinking deep, and the cat began to wail. A dish and a spoon on the table danced. The cow in the garden madly pranced, and the little dog chased his tail. The man in the moon took another mug, and then rolled beneath his chair, and there he dozed and dreamed of ale, till in the sky the stars were pale, and dawn was in the air. Then the ostler said to his tipsy cat, "The white horses of the moon, they neigh and champ their silver bits, but their master's been and drowned his wits, and the sun will be rising soon." So the cat on his fiddle played a diddle-diddle, a jig that would wake the dead. He squeaked and sawed and quickened the tune, while the landlord shook the man in the moon. "It's after 3, he said. They rolled the man slowly up the hill, and bundled him into the moon, while his horses galloped up in rear, and the cow came capering like a deer. and the cow came capering like a deer. And a dish ran up with the spoon. Now quicker the fiddle went deedle-dum-diddle. The dog began to roar. The cow and the horses stood on their heads. The guests all bounded from their beds and danced upon the floor. With a ping and a pong the fiddle strings broke. The cow jumped over the moon. And the little dog laughed to see such fun. And the Saturday dish went off at a run. With the silver Sunday spoon. The round moon rolled behind the hill. As the sun raised up her head, she hardly believed her fiery eyes. For though it was day, to her surprise, they all went back to bed. There was loud and long applause. Frodo had a good voice, and the song tickled their fancy. "Where's old Barley?" they cried. "He ought to hear this. Bob ought to learn his cat the fiddle, and then we'd have a dance." They called for more ale, and began to shout, "Let's have it again, master. Come on now. Once more." They made Frodo have another drink, and then began the song again, while many of them joined in, for the tune was well known, and they were quick at picking up words. It was now Frodo's turn to feel pleased with himself. He capered about on the table, and when he came a second time to the cow jumped over the moon, he leaped in the air. Much too vigorously, for he came down, bang, into a tray full of mugs, and slipped and rolled off the table with a crash, clatter, and bump. The audience all opened their mouths wide for laughter, and stopped short a gaping silence, for the singer disappeared. He simply vanished, as if he had gone slap through the floor without leaving a hole. The local hobbits stared in amazement, and then sprang to their feet and shouted for Barlaman. All the company drew away from Pippin and Sam, who found themselves left alone in a comber, and eyed darkly and doubtfully from a distance. It was plain that many people regarded them now as the companions of a traveling magician of unknown powers and purpose. But there was one swarthy Bree-lander, who stood looking at them with a knowing and half-mocking expression that made them feel very uncomfortable. Presently he slipped out of the door, followed by the squint-eyed southerner. The two had been whispering together a good deal during the evening. Harry the gatekeeper also went out just behind them. Frodo felt a fool. Not knowing what else to do, he crawled away under the tables to the dark comber by Strider, who sat unmoved, giving no sign of his thoughts. Frodo leaned back against the wall and took off the ring. How it came to be on his finger he could not tell. He could only suppose that he had been handling it in his pocket while he sang, and that somehow it had slipped on when he stuck out his hand with a jerk to save his fall. For a moment he wondered if the ring itself had not played him a trick. Perhaps it had tried to reveal itself in response to some wish or command that was felt in the room. He did not like the looks of the men that had gone out. "Well," said Strider, when he reappeared. "Why did you do that?" "Worse than anything your friends could have said. You have put your foot in it. Or should I say your finger?" "I don't know what you mean," said Frodo, annoyed and alarmed. "Oh yes, you do," answered Strider, "but we had better wait until the uproar has died down. Then, if you please, Mr. Baggins, I should like a quiet word with you." "What about?" asked Frodo, ignoring the sudden use of his proper name. "A matter of some importance, to us both," answered Strider, looking Frodo in the eye. "You may hear something to your advantage." "Very well," said Frodo, trying to appear unconcerned. "I'll talk to you later." Meanwhile an argument was going on by the fireplace. Mr. Butterbur had come trotting in, and he was now trying to listen to several conflicting accounts of the event at the same time. "I saw him, Mr. Butterbur," said a hobbit, "or leastways I didn't see him, if you take my meaning. He just vanished into thin air, in a manner of speaking." "You don't say, Mr. Mugwort," said the landlord, looking puzzled. "Yes I do," replied Mugwort. "And I mean what I say, what's more." "There's some mistake somewhere," said Butterbur, shaking his head. "There was too much of that Mr. Underhill to go vanishing into thin air, for in as is more likely in this room. Well, where is he now? Cried several voices. How should I know? He's welcome to go where he will, so long as he pays in the morning. There's Mr. Tooth, now, he's not vanished. Well, I saw what I saw, and I saw what I didn't, said Mugwort obstinately. And I say there's some mistake, repeated Butterbur, picking up the tray and gathering up the broken crockery. Of course there's a mistake, said Frodo. I haven't vanished. Here I am. I've just been having a few words with Strider in the coma. He came forward into the firelight, but most of the company backed away, even more perturbed than before. They were not in the least satisfied by his explanation that he had crawled away quickly under the tables after he had fallen. Most of the hobbits and the men of Bree went off then and there, having no fancy for further entertainment that evening. One or two gave Frodo a black look and departed muttering among themselves. The dwarves and the 2 or 3 strange men that still remained got up and said good night to the landlord, but not to Frodo and his friends. Before long no one was left but Strider, who sat on by the wall. Mr. Butterbur did not seem much without. He reckoned, very probably, that his house would be full again on many future nights, until the present mystery had been thoroughly discussed. Now what have you been doing, Mr. Underhill? He asked. Frightening my customers and breaking up my crocs with your acrobatics. I am very sorry to have caused any trouble, said Frodo. It was quite unintentional, I assure you. A most unfortunate accident. All right, Mr. Underhill. But if you're going to do any more tumbling, or conjuring, or whatever it was, you'd best warn folk beforehand, and warn me. We're a bit suspicious round here of anything out of the way uncanny, if you understand me, and we don't take to it all of a sudden. I shan't be doing anything of the sort again, Mr. Butterbur, I promise you. And now I think I'll be getting to bed. We shall be making an early start. Will you see that our ponies are ready by 8 o'clock? Very good. But before you go, I should like a word with you in private, Mr. Underhill. Something has just come back to my mind that I ought to tell you. I hope that you'll not take it amiss. When I've seen to a thing or two, I'll come along to your room, if you're willing. Certainly, said Frodo, but his heart sank. He wondered how many private talks he would have before he got to bed, and what they would reveal. Were these people all in league against him? He began to suspect even old Butterbur's fat face of concealing dark designs. Chapter 10. Strider. Frodo, Pippin, and Sam made their way back to the parlor. There was no light. Merry was not there, and the fire had burned low. It was not until they had puffed up the embers into a blaze and thrown on a couple of faggots that they discovered Strider had come with them. There he was calmly sitting in a chair by the door. "Hello," said Pippin. "Who are you, and what do you want?" "I am called Strider," he answered, "and though he may have forgotten it, your friend promised to have a quiet talk with me. You said I might hear something to my advantage, I believe," said Frodo. "What have you to say?" "Several things," answered Strider. "But, of course, I have my price." "What do you mean?" asked Frodo sharply. "Don't be alarmed. I mean just this, I will tell you what I know, and give you some good advice, but I shall want a reward." "And what will that be, pray?" said Frodo. He suspected now that he had fallen in with a rascal, and he thought uncomfortably that he had brought only a little money with him. All of it would hardly satisfy a rogue, and he could not spare any of it. "No more than you can afford," answered Strider with a slow smile, as if he guessed Frodo's thoughts. "Just this, you must take me along with you, until I wish to leave you." "Oh, indeed," replied Frodo, surprised, but not much relieved. "Even if I wanted another companion, I should not agree to any such thing, until I knew a good deal more about you, and your business." "Excellent," exclaimed Strider, crossing his legs and sitting back comfortably. You seem to be coming to your senses again, and that is all to the good. You have been much too careless so far. Very well. I will tell you what I know, and leave the reward to you. You may be glad to grant it, when you have heard me. Go on then, said Frodo. What do you know? Too much, too many dark things, said Strider grimly. But as for your business he got up and went to the door, opened it quickly and looked out. Then he shut it quietly and sat down again. I have quick ears, he went on, lowering his voice, and though I cannot disappear, I have hunted many wild and wary things and I can usually avoid being seen, if I wish. Now, I was behind the hedge this evening on the road west of Bree, when 4 hobbits came out of the downlands. I need not repeat all that they said to old Bombadil or to one another, but one thing interested me. Please remember, said one of them, that the name Baggins must not be mentioned. I am Mr. Underhill, if any name must be given. That interested me so much that I followed them here. I slid over the gate just behind them. Maybe Mr. Baggins has an honest reason for leaving his name behind, but if so, I should advise him and his friends to be more careful. I don't see what interest my name has for anyone in Bree, said Frodo angrily, and I have still to learn why it interests you. Mr. Strider may have an honest reason for spying and eavesdropping, but if so, I should advise him to explain it. Well answered, said Strider laughing. But the explanation is simple. I was looking for a hobbit called Frodo Baggins. I wanted to find him quickly. I had learned that he was carrying out of the Shire, well, a secret that concerned me and my friends. Now, don't mistake me, he cried, as Frodo rose from his seat, and Sam jumped up with a scowl. I shall take more care of the secret than you do. And care is needed. He leaned forward and looked at them. Watch every shadow, he said in a low voice. Black horsemen have passed through Bree. On Monday one came down the Greenway, they say, and another appeared later, coming up the Greenway from the south.
So I have a chiropractor appointment that I'm gonna go to at 2, and I figure now is a good stopping point. So goodbye.